morning is from 1 Corinthians 12, 1 through 11, pages 1395 to 1396 in your pew Bible. It's entitled Spiritual Gifts. My friends, you asked me about spiritual gifts. I want you to remember that before you became followers of the Lord, you were led in all wrong ways by idols that cannot even talk. Now I want you to know that if you are led by God's Spirit, you will say that Jesus is Lord, and you will never curse Jesus. There are different kinds of spiritual gifts, but they all come from the same Spirit. There are different ways to serve the same Lord, and we can each do different things. Yet the same God works in all of us and helps us in everything we do. The Spirit has given each of us a special way of serving others. Some of us can speak with wisdom, while others can speak with knowledge. But these gifts come from the same Spirit. To others, the Spirit has given great faith or the power to heal the sick, or the power to work mighty miracles. Some of us are prophets, and some of us recognize when God's Spirit is present. Others can speak different kinds of languages, and still others can tell what these languages mean. But it is the Spirit who does all this and decides which gifts to give to each of us. Amen.
Amen.
When Paul was writing this letter, the people that came together and prayed and worshiped and sang and ate, I picture a big potluck is what I really picture. They were in house churches. There weren't any formal buildings like we have today. And so Paul mentions certain attributes of gifts in his letter. And he talks about people prophesying and people speaking different languages and interpreting the languages, and people who are very spiritual, like prayer warriors like we have today, of course, and some of these other gifts. But today, most of us meet in some kind of a building, not in someone's home, and there's a lot more going on with gifts today, actually, than then. Because in a house church, if you were the householder, the one who owned the house, you would be responsible for your own gardening and for probably for some of the food and cleaning the toilets, all the things that have to be done. But today there are so many things in any given community of faith that you can just almost have an exhaustive list going on and on and on. And what I'm trying to say to you today is that you're all gifted. So much attention has been put on the preacher. Way too much. Can you imagine? Say we didn't have any music today at all. Say we just cut it all out. Jody, forget you. We're not going to have you anymore. We're not going to have Kelly play the organ, no choir, nothing. I can imagine you going home thinking, something's missing. The service lacked something. Yeah, it did. It was music. Music is a way of experiencing God's grace and blessings. And say that we had paper all over the pews there, maybe from last Sunday, and no one ever picked up any of the bulletins in it, and you had to kind of climb over things. That wouldn't be very nice, would it? I mean, it would just kind of, the worship experience would just lack something. It would be messy. And you wouldn't want that, would you? And I was telling some of the folks in Bible and Bagels this morning, when I first came to the church, I couldn't even see that brick that goes around our garden outside here. It was full of weeds. It was so high and full of weeds that you couldn't even see that. And when you looked out the window, it wasn't really that pretty. If you look beyond the weeds, you know, the trees were fine, but the weeds certainly weren't. And someone came forward and said, you know what, I think I'd like to do something and take care of the garden. It wasn't that we paid anybody, they just volunteered to do it and did a really good job. That is truly a gift from God. And you have people that really have a green thumb. You know who I'm talking about? The ones that know how to you look at a rose and it just blooms. And the rest of us who have a brown thumb, you look at the poor little sucker and the thing shrivels. So being able to garden and have a green thumb, that is a gift from God. Or the gift of enhancing a building or a sanctuary. When I first got here, that altar there was no altar cloth, there was no candles, there was no cross. It was barren. See the plants we have, they're artificial, but they still give it a kind of a warm feeling. None of that. And our little
love circle
bird there that comes down like the dove, you know, it wasn't there. It looked like a barn in here. Can you imagine how many brides that would come in here and take one look at this place and say, I don't think so. This is just too barren. But it's by all of us pulling together that have made this place possible, that enhances worship, that makes worship a really worthwhile experience. And it's because of all of you. Some of you don't like to get up and speak, but boy, you are great prayer warriors. Some people are wonderful and they lay on hands and people feel better. Again, that's a gift from God that should be treasured by each and every one of us. And those of you who are the musicians, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because without you, it would be boring around here, wouldn't it? I can't look at anybody out here and not see that you're not gifted. I work with special ed students who have IQs that are so low they probably can't even calculate them. But I have one little guy right now who, he has the gift of love. He just shows love to everybody. He is so happy when he comes down off that bus. He gives everybody a big hug and smiles and greets us and makes us feel that he really, really likes being there. What a gift. Most people, when they come to school in the morning, particularly if it's early, they're grouchy, right? You have to get up early and have all that work to do. They're like grouches, but not Jorge. Oh no, he loves to come to school. He's just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed every morning. And I have some other students who have other kinds of gifts, even though they may not be recognized by general society. Some of them can sing. Some of them have a real gift of paying attention. Some of them don't. But what I'm saying really is that each and every one of you has a gift. And I want you to appreciate it. I want you to see yourself as a gifted person. Yet no, not everybody likes to stand up and preach. I even get tired of my own voice sometimes. But there's so many other things that enhance worship, that make it possible, that make you feel in God's presence. And that's what we all want to have, don't we? We want to feel as if we're in God's presence. And we want the Spirit of God to run through us so that we can feel it and experience it. And in our lives, we often experience God through our senses. We taste. Yeah, we do. After church, we sure do. We taste the wonderful things that God has given us. We can touch. We feel each other's presence and love. We have our time of greeting. We hear words and music that enhance our lives. We can really appreciate all that God has given us. And smell. Yeah, even smell. When you smell the flowers, when you smell the coffee in the morning, again, God is alive and working through each and every one of us. So let us not put ourselves down and say, oh, I can't do much of anything. Oh, yeah, you can. You can do a lot. Each and every one of you. You're all important in God's realm and in this church that we treasure, that we have with each other. Amen.
Amen.